And welcome to Bronx Talk. Tonight's guest is the council member from the 13th City Council District, which includes the Bronx neighborhoods of, and I'm going to list them, she knows them, Allerton, City Island, Country Club, Edgewater Park, Ferry Point, I'm going to run out of fingers, Locust Point, Morris Park, Pelham Bay, Pelham Gardens, Pelham Parkway, Schuylerville, Silver Beach, Spencer Estates, Throgs Neck, Van Ness, Waterbury, LaSalle, Westchester Square, and Zuriga. That's alphabetical order. So please join me in welcoming to Bronx Talk Councilmember Marjorie Velázquez. We've got a lot to talk about it. So first of all, how are you?
I'm great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You came in bubbly and smiley. You were with kids today, this morning?
This morning I did. I was with the student government of 101, MS 101, and it was just an incredible moment to see kids this age, like as early as 6th grade, ready and willing to engage and to work for community, to see a space that they can define as their own and think of not just their current reality, but how can we build more together?
Because they watch a lot of TV, and they see a lot of issues, and how do we deal with it? And for you to be there is a wonderful thing, because then they feel like it's, touchy-feely. Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about. Let's start with food insecurity. You've done a lot of work about food insecurity, most recently working with Jacoby's pediatric department to identify families facing food insecurity. You supported their efforts with food deliveries. How pervasive is the problem? And I mean, the solutions are get them out of poverty and more food, but how do you see it? What's your perspective?
I mean, certainly the system needs to change, right? And it is, what is the system? And it is on us to look at ways to create more livable wages, right? Jobs that do provide real careers and pathways for families. That's the number one thing. Housing, making sure that we are housing our families, and more importantly, that we are providing food that is also nutritious, that meets more than just the simple basic nutrition that we're looking at, right? And it's really honing into what can we do, right? It is looking at and working with our supermarkets to identify food deserts, working with the city to identify spaces that we can work together with the street vendors to see if meeting that need as well. It's an all-encompassing thing and all hands on deck, and we're working together with each and every single one. And I have to give credit to the pediatric department at Jacoby Hospital, where they developed a system, right? The interns started it off just by a simple response and asking a questionnaire when a parent brings in their child. So
the educational component is in there, and they have the access because they see kids and families all the time. Yes. It makes a lot of sense to me, that educational component to get us all out of potato chips and fast food, because they're everywhere. I'd like to see. I'm going to talk about my own neighborhood, which is not your district, but we get. I don't want to beat on any corporations, but we get a new Wendy's. I'd rather not have the new Wendy's, but and it was right next to a McDonald's. I'd rather have something else that was a little more nutritious.
I'd rather have a mom and pop selling salads, selling whole food for our families, and that's where we're getting to. And I think
you think there's a movement. Your colleagues in the council understand that?
Most definitely. I mean, take a look at someone like Councilmember Kevin Riley, who is he shows us he works out every day. He does encourage so us council members in the Bronx. So a little secret, we have a chat, and he's very encouraging and uplifting. And anyone who does want to work out with him, he encourages that.
Wow.
And so as a good group, it's like building each other up. That's good for you
folks. We got to get that out to the
streets.
And
he does, and he puts it out. And it's going back to Jacoby and the pediatric department. That model should be replicated throughout the city.
Which leads us perfectly into the number of development projects that I want to talk to you about. Really, at the top of the list has to be the Bruckner rezoning. As far back as October 2021, you had said you had opposed this rezoning project that would build 4 new buildings, 349 units. You know this like you know your own name. 168 would be affordable and some reserved for veterans. You repeated that opposition a couple of times, all the way right up till when you said, I think it was the Daily News quoted you as saying, I'm still opposed, and that's it. And then you voted for it. So I know that people want to hear what you have to say, what happened during that period of time that made you say first no, and then you wanted to support it.
It was the community coming and asking for it. Yes, the press did play people who were against it, and they got a lot of coverage, but there were a lot of people calling into my office, seeing me in the street, stopping me and asking for support and asking for more affordable housing options. And it's also what was the final product, and it was pushing the developers to make sure that at the end of the day, it's for us, by us. What does that mean? It means that the job opportunities come back directly to the Bronx. Oftentimes, development comes in, and the first thing that goes out the window are the jobs. They go to Jersey, they go to folks in Pennsylvania, and then we literally have folks coming into our district, building for us, and yet our families don't have the opportunity to make that livable wage. And I fought very hard alongside carpenters for stuff like that. And so at this project, you see unions like 32BJ, Local 79, and carpenters involved in it.
Are these long-term jobs or temporary jobs for the building of the obviously that will create jobs, but eventually
So
those will run out.
construction-wise, you would see that would be deemed as temporary, right? Because for as long as the construction would. The long-term jobs would be with 32BJ as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next component that was very important to me was providing community space, right? So it was working with Kips Bay Boys and Girls Club that right now is sitting in a NYCHA facility that is crumbling. It is crumbling. And our children deserve better. Our communities deserve better. So I am here fighting, you know, against NYCHA and what's happening there, but I'm also providing solutions on a current basis and saying, look, this is what we can do, so let's move them out of there to make sure that our children have an opportunity to play in an area that is not just only safe, but that is conducive to their development.
And some of these things, like the community space, was not there. That information wasn't available way back when.
It was pushing, and it was demanding these things. It was
And so you got some of those concessions. I know there was a question about the carpenters union, that originally it was not unionized and then it became unionized. Is that what the transformation was?
So yeah, it's many pieces to the puzzle, right? And unfortunately, it hasn't been discussed. One, because certain people after the vote just didn't want to talk about it. But unfortunately, I had a situation in between the land use vote and the stated meeting where I had a death in the family that I had to leave. And so, you know, the media opportunity that me, the mayor, and the speaker had arranged, had to take a step back so I could be with family.
Cynics have also said, well, you know, Open New York, which was all behind this project from the beginning, there was an article, where was it, in the Bronx Times, said they were not happy with your opposition to the project. And then, of course, you're going to be up for re-election. Did that play at all into your thinking? In other words,
32BJ
their
was
support or not support?
32BJ supported me when I ran, and they were for the project as well. Carpenters supported me as well, and they were against the project. So you had both sides, and at the end of the day, it's not about any other side except the community side that needs this type of development. The city needs development throughout all 5 boroughs, and it's making sure that we're building for the community at large, and our community came first when it came to jobs, and certainly with the kinds of apartments and housing that will be coming in, right? We focus specifically on our seniors, so we will have 100 units for our seniors dedicated 100% affordable housing, period. And then on top of that, we fought really, really hard for 25 dedicated units for our veterans. So they're attached to the veterans themselves, where if the veteran comes in with their family and it's a 2-bedroom, it stays with them. And so that it was very important to us to make sure that our families knew that we were fighting for them, and our vets who have fought for us and have protected us knew that I was fighting for them and protecting them in this development. Additionally, there's a component for home ownership that was not revealed, because that's what we were waiting to reveal to everybody. And unfortunately, this whole
It got lost
in the sauce. Yeah.
Since we're talking about development and creation of jobs and how housing should be created, what's your vision on how the new Metro North stations will play? Carp City, Morris Park, Park Chester, Van Nest, and Hunts Point will get new Metro North stops. There's a lot of talk about development. There was an op-ed piece, I think, in the Bronx Times that said, "Oh my goodness, this means bringing in crowded streets and changing the nature of our comfortable neighborhoods." What's your vision of how that will, those stations, many of them in your district, will impact the Bronx in your district?
I got 2 out of 4. So I have 2 of the out of that, and it has been a lot of conversations, and certainly it is with the different vested interests, and certainly discussing with it the community. Remember, this was discussed as early as when I was still on the community board. So to say that this is,
I have to say it was discussed even before that.
Yeah, right. This is like
it's been out there for years, but it's
a reality now, though, and it's so beautiful.
And so, how do we make it play so that people benefit and existing residents don't say, "Hey, wait a minute, this is others coming in, and it's going to change the nature of our communities"?
Just like I did with Bruckner. It's at the end of the day, jobs come to our community, housing dedicated to our community, making sure that we're coming from a perspective that there is a way to bridge that gap, and more importantly, finally, for once, we will not have to deal with this transit desert that we have lived with so long, right? And this is our opportunity for families to understand that now we can get into the city with this within like 45 minutes. We have that option with the ferry. Now we're adding this other option with the Metro North. And that, to me, means more opportunities for families to have jobs outside, but more importantly, for the rest of the city to see how amazing our district is, and the opportunities for all the small businesses to grow, our restaurants to have more folks come in, experience something like a Havana Cafe. You know, we always talk about them. They're amazing, but that's our little special place. Now everybody gets to see it.
She just gave away my secret.
I'm sorry.
No, but the idea here is that you think it'll bring more people. You know, you mentioned the ferry stop. People at City Island are saying, "Hey, wait a minute, the council member doesn't seem to be supporting the notion of a ferry stop in our neighborhood." What do you think of a ferry stop at City Island?
I don't know which people said that. I'm for the area. Certainly Orchard Beach is the prime spot. Why? I'm getting...
And you'd like to see that there?
Oh yeah, I've been very honest with the Economic Development Corporation on that, and they're already exploring that. And we recently worked with the Economic Development Corporation and the Parks Department with finally getting the dredging work done at Hammond's Cove. And that's another area in Locust Point where now families can go ahead and use that waterway, right? This is our district, and we are not using our waterways as we should.
I always thought that, and I have taken the ferry from Locust Point and actually from Throgs Neck as well, that the Locust Point one, they made a mistake because they didn't really come up with parking. Of course, if it happens at Orchard Beach, there's obviously plenty of parking there.
Yeah, and especially months like now, right? Where families can literally leave their cars as a park and ride and go take the ferry, go into the city, come back.
I got to tell you, this is an aside, folks. It's a beautiful ride. I mean, we didn't do it because we wanted to get into the city. We just did it because do it on a spring or summer day, take the kids. It's gorgeous. And that's an aside.
No, I'm here for it. Yeah, no, I mean, and our families deserve that.
Let's talk about this very controversial Just Home project. The proposal, for folks who may not know, 1900 Seminole Avenue on the Jacoby Medical Center grounds would construct 70 units of supportive housing, 50 for homeless New Yorkers who are coming out of jail who need ongoing specialty care, 20 units for low-income housing for area residents. Do you support it? And again, should residents say, well, wait a minute, she opposes it, but she's going to change at the last minute? What's your vision of this project?
So the vision ultimately should be what is best for not just the community, but look, someone who had my own medical issues for quite some time, the entrance to the building, it's just not feasible. We're still having conversations about what is feasible, right? We're talking about folks that have medical complexities, and how can we make sure that we're addressing their needs in a way that we're not adding more burden into them, right?
So
I don't like it.
The entrance of the building?
I don't like the location. Look at Building 2, right? You look at towards the entrance. What's around there? What's the transit options there? very little when we're offering families to come visit folks where they're going to park. It's oversaturated right now. When we're looking at food options, right? And this is going
You're
back
just
to
talking to the
the
original
food.
dialogue.
The food insecurity there is very real, and you can't even get up and say, "Oh, let me go across the street to even a bodega," because there's nothing around there. It's only food trucks that show up, and that's not healthy to me. And so there's a real conversation also about going back, and what my proposal and my position has been. This is an opportunity to go back to the district and have a real conversation and say, look, the Bronx does not have a women's health center. We do not have a dedicated area to address the many needs and the realities that women face. You know, I'm a woman of color that, you know, is looking to start a family, and if you look at the numbers in the Bronx, it's not healthy.
Are you saying that we should put a women's health center there?
Correct. That's what I'm looking for.
Oh, at that space. Is there another place in your district or anywhere that you think would be more appropriate for this to deal with people who are formerly incarcerated?
That's the conversations we're having within, not only within the community, but certainly with the administration and all of our other
Even
partners.
the Fortune Society, I would presume?
The Fortune Society, from my understanding, they are the ones who won the RFP.
Right.
So if the RFP changes, that's a separate,
Changes, that would be a
and that would be an
separate
admin conversation with them.
There were hearings on this, and we actually covered it on our program as well. They were, for want of a better term, despicable. People were yelling at people. People were being threatened. They were calling people who would be served by the project animals and criminals. Can't we have a civil dialogue about, like we're having now, about a controversial project without it denigrating into this sort of chaos? I mean, it was just, I saw it and I was like, this is not the Bronx that I know, that I've been part of for all these years.
Really not only hurts me, right, as seeing that, because that's not the example of my district. And certainly I understand frustration and passion, right? I'm a very passionate individual, and people have seen me at the height of my passion, but it shouldn't lead to disrespect, and it certainly should not lead to a world where we're name calling. We're better than that. We're Bronxite, we're tough, right? We have this thick skin, but that does not mean that we can go ahead and start doing that. And so they're not representative of my district, and I encourage folks to do better, because I've met folks from within the community who oppose it, who do not speak like that.
The borough president responded and said there would be changes. She wasn't clear on it. She's actually coming on our show, I think, next week, and we'll get a chance to ask her about it. It was a Community Board 11 hosted meeting. Changes in that way, changes in, and now I know that the chair just stepped down apparently. Is there a finger pointing at the community board? What needs to happen so that the next development project, maybe something coming up around the Metro North stations, we can have a dialogue? I mean, I'm not going to say for or against, but we can have a normal kind of conversation about it without it denigrating into this.
I think, first of all, the fear-mongering over development, that's kind of where folks got that frustration and that anxiety built up. Also, we were home for those 2 years during the pandemic. So it's just added so many layers into this.
Layers of frustration.
Frustration, and we see that play out. Now we're showing people what development looks like, the opportunity, right? And how that can play out. And certainly with the borough president and myself having the conversations, at the end of the day, people will disagree and agree. I don't expect everyone to always agree with me, because that's just not a reality.
It's not going to happen, I can guarantee.
Not even my husband agrees with me 100% of the time, right? But when it comes down to principles that we can establish as a community, what I've established for any development coming into the district is livable wages coming to us, for us, by us. That housing comes directly designed for my community. And at the end of the day, when there are commercial areas, what is it going to bring? How is it going to bring my folks up?
Well, you know, you've segued right into my next question about the proposed rezoning that would bring a 10-story, 333-unit development at the Fine Fair Supermarket site over there on Boston Road in Allerton. 40 to 60% of the units reserved for households earning up to 80% of the AMI. A good development? You like the idea?
Certainly still having conversations with the development team, certainly with the
So
administration.
wait and see is what
and
I'm hearing.
community. Look, at the end of the day, when they already came to me, they have union backing. They have a promise to deliver local jobs, a promise to have local housing and my district prioritized right off the bat without me even asking. Then they took what I said with Bruckner very seriously. And that's why when we design principles for our district, that's what it should be. That at the end of the day, we're designing for us, by us, because I am sick and tired of jobs leaving us and housing leaving us.
You and I just had a brief conversation about it before the show. The mayor's idea that we are the city of yes, that all rezonings we support. Can I make the assumption based on this conversation you don't fully agree with that you don't mind a rezoning as long as it has those considerations? Or are you on the same page with him like we want to do this?
There are
Because the need is there.
There are 51 members of the city council. Each member has the right to negotiate for their district and to design development for their district as they see fit. I see this fit in my district. I don't think it necessarily works for other districts, but at the end of the day, I need to make sure I'm taking care of the families that built this neighborhood, and I hate to see them being lost to going to Westchester or to Long Island, because those are the only options that they have. We have to build to give options for our families to stay, and certainly allow where they have, right? I've seen seniors living in homes that are way too big for them. Why not give them an opportunity to live in housing in the district at the same time where they live, giving a young family an opportunity to grow and have that same experience that they had and their
so
kids had.
those are your quote-unquote requirements for any rezoning
And I said that
or
in my
any
speech.
development?
I said that in my speech when the hearing, even just beginning to the hearing before I even agreed to it. These are my principles.
Cannabis is coming. It's already here. Of course, if you looked at the one store downtown, the Bronx is taking a role. 3 different Bronx businesses were approved to get licenses. I asked, we did a show about cannabis with some people involved in it. I asked, what would life look like in the city as a result? We've heard concerns about people saying, well, maybe smoking pot in the street or whatever. And I said, are you concerned? I mean, is there a downside to kind of doing the reparations that are needed for people who've been hurt by this over the many years? And they said they expected little change and that people would not be permitted to smoke pot anyway where you can't smoke. So you can't be in a restaurant, you can't be on the subway, et cetera, et cetera. Do you have concerns about its effect on life in the Bronx? Or do you see this as, forward thinking and a forward development?
The concerns I have, and I'm the chair of the Consumer and Worker Protection Committee, is making sure that we are protecting our communities and holding true to the value. These licenses came out with the social equity component, and we've seen a lot of these random smoke shops all of a sudden appear,
Yes.
right? And so, folks, January 18th, I have a hearing alongside the Oversight Committee and the Health Committee on these smoke shops. If they sell any cannabis products out of smoke shops, it's illegal, and you have every right to contact my office. You have every right to reach out to OCM and stop it. So, and please come to the hearing because we're going to hold these guys accountable.
And the mayor has made it clear now.
Yes.
I think they're finally going after now that
We're shutting them down.
They're going to
you get shut down because they are usually next to schools, and we're uncomfortable with that. We, the district, saw what K2 did to the district. I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm really against it because of the fact that these smoke shops that do this hurt our communities way more than they just see. And for $1, I'm not here for that.
You want people to obey the regulations. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yes, but at the same time, it's more than that. You're undervaluing the current licenses and the whole principle behind the social equity program.
I want to change gears a little
Sure.
bit. In 2017, Hurricane Maria devastated the island of Puerto Rico. 5 years later, Hurricane Fiona, maybe not as devastating, but still impacted the island, making it pretty clear that in the 5 years, infrastructure needs had still not been addressed. Now there's the Self-Determination Act proposed in Congress that would establish a process potentially for people to vote on the political status for statehood. We got about a minute for this and a minute for one other item. What do you think?
I think it's time that Puerto Rico has a chance to decide what its own fate. That's it. Like in the past, they've
And that would include
all
the
three options.
infrastructure needs and all those other
Well,
things.
they need to decide what they want to do, if they want to remain a commonwealth, if they want to become a state, or if they want to be independent. And after that, then we can discuss how does infrastructure affect them and how can the U.S. work together. But right now, even when we went, me, the mayor, Councilmember Salamanca, Borough President Donovan Richards, when we all went and we saw what Puerto Rico went through, and look, we went to my mom's town. So I got reunited with my aunt that I couldn't reach over a phone. So we saw that need.
Yay or nay if you were voting on statehood? You like the idea or you're not
If
sure?
I was a Puerto Rican living in Puerto Rico and deciding my fate, I would have to be living there to understand the realities.
Okay, fair enough. Last thing, you want to make sure that we say that you're participating in participatory
Yes,
budgeting.
yes.
When is that? What do constituents need to know to be able to participate in participatory budgeting?
So we've got $1 million that we're offering the district, and it is coming up with an idea. So the idea submission phase was from October, November, and the voting phase should be coming up soon. Please go to our website. We have all the details, or even call our office.
What kinds of things in your mind would you say, gee, I'd like to see requests for this?
So,
Parks, housing? I mean,
yeah,
you
no,
tell
we
me.
got a lot
Did
of
I
park
just-
stuff. Yeah, no, you did. You get to some good ones. So we've got great recommendations. And by the way, you could be as young as 10 years old and submit an
Wow.
idea. And you could, we've been giving folks, from my understanding, you could be, you don't have to, there's no age requirement for the voting
Right.
either. That's what I'm trying to say.
But
But
what-
like
what
it's $1
kinds
million.
of things do
So
you wanna see?
you could, I personally want to see how can this $1 million change your life, right? And by your life, I mean parks. It could mean, so my kids this morning, I'm calling them my kids. They're like, oh, how about our schoolyard? Okay, put it in. If this is your idea, you want to see more benches, let's do that.
And you know, even if the money doesn't get awarded this time, it starts your thinking about the next time at your own discretionary funding, et
And
cetera.
it talks about civic engagement to kids
Got
at
it.
an early age.
Councilmember Marjorie Velázquez, thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary.
You know we'll invite you back. We'll
Yes.
give you a little time to get back to work, and then we'll call you back. Thank you so much for
you.
your time
I appreciate it.
this evening. We also thank our producer, Rebecca Hemick. Our director is Nick Marrero, and the cast of thousands who work with us here in the studio. Next week, we will be with Borough President Vanessa Gibson. We're going to talk about economic development, unemployment, and poverty, and a range of other issues. We'll see you then. Good night.